So the point of this particular clip is to show you the slides again from today's presentation, the introduction to Band of Brothers, and so that you can listen to a summary of them without having to take too many notes during class. So we started the lesson by looking at some images and representations of old people. We looked at this guy and we laughed, of course, at his dressing gown, and we laughed at this guy and his canary yellow jacket. We also talked about how frustrating it was dealing with old people. For example, trying to show your grandparent how to use the internet or something like that. You didn't really like this picture, and some of you said something like, "Grandma, put that away." And we talked about how annoying it was and off-putting to see old people, maybe your nan or your great-nan, eating an ice cream. And we laughed at this guy, who many of you have seen driving around Countdown trying to park his car. Some of you waved to this man using only one finger, which is very economical of you. And then we started the lesson proper, and you probably thought, well, that's good. It was just a little bit of a laugh at the start to look at some funny things that old people do. So introducing Band of Brothers, we looked at the quotation from a play by William Shakespeare, Henry V, and this quotation was delivered just before the troops went into battle. And so you see that the king is almost making himself equal with his followers there by "We Band of Brothers." We looked briefly at the assessment, and we looked briefly at some sample questions, and you can of course see previous questions. 2012's questions on the NZQA website are probably the most relevant to you. We talked about what our study will focus on. In particular, we want to do something more than just write about the camera techniques. There's a list of other films and texts that you perhaps might also like to explore. Some of these could be of relevance to your personal project as well. And then we looked at some more representations of soldiers. Here are some, I think they're Americans, they could be British, you never know. I think this is in Fallujah in Iraq. And we looked at these soldiers here, and how this is a different type of aggression being depicted. We looked at the Vietnam War. You might remember that the helicopter there is a Hughes helicopter, or a Huey, and the two behind, of course, are Dewey and Louis. We looked at this photo, and you thought this looks a bit fake, and it is. This is from the filming of Saving Private Ryan. And this isn't a fake photograph. This is a British soldier in Basra in Iraq being a wounded soldier being rescued by one of his brothers. And this very heavily stylized and photoshopped picture is from the publicity for Band of Brothers. And because I'm very selfish, I'll show you a picture that's very relevant to me. 3 soldiers here in the mountains of Scotland, near where I grew up. This is where the commandos did their training in World War II. And when you look closely at that, you see the inscription around the base, "United we conquer." And I think that's a nice inscription for us maybe as a class to remember. And so this is another publicity still from Band of Brothers miniseries. Here are the actors on set. But this group of soldiers are the real Band of Brothers. These are the real people on which our TV series is based. And this character here is Carwood Lipton. He's important because he is the focus of the episode that we're going to study in depth. And Carwood Lipton is played by Donnie Wahlberg there. And there's Donnie Wahlberg on the right, and on the left, that's the real Carwood Lipton. Remember we laughed at him in his canary yellow jacket earlier? He's the real World War II veteran. And then we looked at this picture of old men. And we noticed all the medals and their very serious faces as they're marching down Whitehall in London on November the 11th. We looked again at the real Band of Brothers, real Easy Company. And then we started discussing episode 1. We looked a little bit at the map of where the action was taking place for our particular episode, but Episode 1 takes place mainly in the United States because it's a flashback as they prepare for the invasion of France. And there's a brief summary of the first 7 episodes of Band of Brothers. Our episode for close study is episode 7, but we will be watching bits from episode 1. So you might remember here's what we are preparing for, and here's the first about half an hour or so of episode 1. Some notes for you. And shortly we'll be moving on to episode 7.